Now let's get started on our juicy strawberries. I start off with my masking fluid. I put maybe a half a teaspoon on my little plate, and I barely even used what I put on the plate. I rolled my brush in a little bit of bar soap. That helps protect my brush from getting all gummy and ruined with the masking fluid. I've already marked out where I want my highlights to be and where my seeds are, so I'm just placing my masking fluid in those areas to begin with. It's a little bit of a tedious process, but it will definitely be worth it in the end and will really help with our 3D effect and our details at the very end of the strawberry. I'm pre-wetting the whole berry with some water. I want my first layer of paint to just go on there softly. At the top of our berry, it's going to be a little bit yellow, a little bit green. So those are the first colors that we're going to place in there. I'm using a warm red. This is my permanent red deep. Just building up my vibrancy. This first layer, when it soaks into the paper, will become a little more dull, so we're going to be building this color as we go. You'll be kind of amazed at how many layers we end up putting on here and how many layers of shadow and detail to get that 3D effect in the end. But we don't really want to rush the process, so building those layers slowly is very helpful. Now I'm using a deeper red. It's a cooler red. I'll list all the colors that I'm using in the description. This just really helps give the berry dimension. That warm will pop through and the deeper red will kind of create some of that dimension. It's almost dry, but not quite. I'm just tapping out a little bit at the top for some highlight, using my handy hair dryer to get that first layer dried so I can move on to the second step. The little seeds are inset, so there's a lot of shadow around those seeds, so we're just making a little thicker mixture using my warm and my cool red. And we're just going to start working on our first layer of shadow. This process takes a little while. I'm looking at my inspiration photo as I go, and I'd kind of drawn on my strawberry a little bit where some of my highlights and shadows were going to be. So I'm kind of looking at where those are. Those pencil marks will disappear as I add my layers on. I'm not going to make my strawberry exactly like the inspiration photo. The inspiration photo is there for me just to get an idea of what those shadows look like, what those details look like. For me, copying a picture creates a level of stress, and so I just really like to use that picture as inspiration, just a slight guideline on what I'm looking for. So as you see me paint, you'll notice that my painting won't match up exactly to the inspiration photo. But that is okay, because this is my strawberry and I'm approaching it the way that I want to approach it. And if you follow this tutorial and you want to follow the inspiration photo more, that would be wonderful. And if you want to make it more simple and not as much detail, that is wonderful too. You just make this process your own and create your own strawberry. Your strawberry does not have to look like mine. My strawberry doesn't have to look like the inspiration photo. In the end, we're learning as we go. As each layer dries, I see where I need to add more color and where I want to add more detail. I don't have a full game plan as I'm going in. I have a general idea, but I'm learning a little bit as I go too. I'm building a little more color on the top, adding my Azo Yellow, a little bit of my sap green, just kind of deepening that color at the top. And I'm mixing a little bit of my Moonglow and my Alizarin Crimson and adding in more shadows. Our second layer of shadow. Just get a little deeper each time because I want those shadows to be soft. If I went in with a very dark color in the beginning, it would feel a little harsh. So this is the second time we're adding in the shadow, but there will be a third and possibly a fourth. We don't have to add the shadow underneath every little seed, but in the area that I'm working on now is where we have the most shadow, so we're going to want those areas to be darker. It's amazing how such a small fruit can have so much detail. I went into the idea of this strawberry thinking that it would be very simple, quite easy to do. And then I realized as I got started, there really is a lot of little layers and the detail is little. And so it does take some time. But I'll guarantee it is all worth it in the end. Now here is the fun part. I'm taking my eraser and I'm just rubbing out the areas that I had the masking fluid. And now we can see those highlights starting to pop out. And it's like magic. Kind of cleaning up my palette a little bit. I want my next layer to be very watery, kind of making an extra warm red. Mixing my yellow and my permanent red. And the highlights at the top of the seed are going to be a little bit darker than our highlight underneath the seed. So I'm just softly putting in that warm red, just really watery. And this is going to really help give that dimension, that not every highlight is exactly the same shade. I'm taking a little of my yellow ochre. We're going to start working on the seeds. Our strawberry is really starting to come to life. This is when the painting starts, for me, the painting starts getting more gratifying. I can really start seeing the end result pop up before my eyes. Now we're going to come in with even more shadow. You see how these seeds really start popping. They really look like they're inset into that strawberry. It's interesting to see how just a little bit of shadow and a little bit of highlight can make all the difference. Finally getting to the leaves on the top. This is the simple part of the painting. Just laying in our clear water. And our first layer is going to be a little bit of sap green. Just want that to spread softly. After working so hard on that strawberry, doing these leaves almost feels like I'm taking a little break. I don't have to think quite as hard. I want the strawberry to really be the focus, so I'm going to keep the leaves fairly simple. I'm dropping in a little bit of my Azo Yellow. There might be even a little yellow ochre mixed in with that. That just helps our green as it dries. It just helps give it some dimension and some interest. We just kind of build up our color at the base, kind of where our shadow would be. And now I'm just going to tap in just a little bit of that warm red. That really helps tie in our leaves with our strawberry, so our leaves don't look like they're a separate entity from the strawberry. And it just gives those leaves a little bit of warmth that they needed. I'm just mixing a little bit of my yellow and my green. These next two little leaves, they're almost like a little highlight of a leaf, and I want them to be a lighter color than the rest. Just tapping in a little bit of that warm red, very watery. Just want a hint. Just kind of continue to adding a little bit of detail as things dry. This next step you don't need to do. It's something that I like to do. It's part of my illustrative process. I'm coming in with my 005 Micron pen. It's waterproof, and I'm just adding thin little detail. You almost don't notice it, but it helps give a little definition in those leaves and just a little bit of that veining detail. I'll use it just slightly in my strawberry, where I'll just kind of add to the shadow underneath a few of the seeds just to give a little more detail. I personally just love the way that the pen looks, and so it's just something that I enjoy doing. If this step makes you nervous and you're afraid of ruining your painting, don't worry about doing it. You can gain some of that same detail with a very fine liner brush. And now we finally get to start our strawberry slice. We're just starting off the same way we did with our whole strawberry, just laying down some water. We want our first layers just to be soft and watery. They're going to dry very pale. We're taking that light yellow green mixture as our base layer. This will kind of pop through in the end, but it gives a nice little base. I'm going to use my hairdryer to dry that first layer, and you can kind of see the little oops that just happened. That can happen if your mixture is a little too watery and you angle your hairdryer a little bit off, but I was able to remedy my little mistake. I realized that my pencil marks are a little too dark. Luckily enough, my first layer is so thin that I was able to erase some of that pencil mark out of there. Usually I don't draw in where my highlights are going to be, but I kind of did it this time so I could really keep track of where my color was going, and just realized my pencil marks were definitely too dark. I'm starting off with my warm red, getting that first burst of color on there. I've never painted a strawberry slice before, so I'm kind of learning as I go a little bit here. I just want to start off very softly. I don't want to go in too aggressive. Just bringing in a watery brush, kind of softening the color that I already placed in there. Kind of looking at my inspiration photo off and on, just to kind of continue looking at that reference. Now I'm bringing in my cool red. I just love how that spreads over top of the warm red. It's almost giving a little bit of a watermelon vibe right now, but soon it will start looking more like a strawberry. I think I will have to do a tutorial on a watermelon slice. Now that I think of it, I think that'd be really fun. Sometimes you do learn as you're working on one thing, it kind of teaches you how to do the next thing. And as I'm approaching this top of the strawberry, I am thinking about these techniques and how I can use them on another tutorial. As my color soaks in, I just kind of keep adding my layers of color, trying to keep up that vibrancy. Adding in a little bit of shadow with my Moonglow. It won't be the last time that we're adding in shadow. Moonglow is a Daniel Smith color, and it kind of gradiates. It has kind of a blue, a purple, a little bit of a green in there. So if you don't have Moonglow, you could use a mixture of a purple and a deeper blue for your shadows. I would try to stay away from a brown or a black for your shadow, because we don't want to muddy our red. Realizing I need a little more shadow on my whole strawberry. I'm continuing to work on that vibrancy. adding in more vibrancy. In the beginning, I could have gone in with a lot thicker paint, a thicker consistency to have created that vibrancy from the beginning, but I really just wanted to build those layers softly. You just never know how the paint's going to dry, and so the technique I use is I just continue my layers until I'm happy. The process of doing this part of the strawberry is very similar to what we did on the big strawberry. Just bringing in our warm red for our first layer. You can see the little blue spots when I was adding the masking fluid in the beginning. I had masked out the seeds and some of the highlights on this strawberry also at the same time. I'm a little impatient, so I use my hair dryer almost every single time in between layers so I can just keep going. Adding in my first shadows around my seeds. And guess what? We're adding more shadow. And not every seed has the same type of shadow, so there's going to be some areas closer to the bottom where the shadow's darker. You can really start seeing the dimension happening here. This is always a fun part, taking our masking fluid off. That hair dryer drying that layer really helps soften that masking fluid so it comes off really easy. And if you have good quality paper, I'm using an Arches 140-pound paper, and I've never had any problem with my masking fluid tearing my paper. When I used to use cheaper paper, I had issues with my paper ripping. Just taking a little of my yellow mixture and adding in my seeds. And a very, very watery, warm red to kind of tone down my highlights a little bit. I don't want them to be quite so glaring. Now you can see how that dimension on the seeds has really popped. All those layers we made along the way made all the difference. Just bringing in a little bit more of that warmth. Just taking a watery mixture. I want to just bring up that vibrancy a little bit on the top. And now we get to have a little breather and work on our leaves. Doing the same exact process we did on the big strawberry. Just using our sap green. Just bringing in a little bit of that warm red. Dropping in a little of our Azo Yellow. Just really does help that leaf have a little more interest. Now I just made my yellow a little bit darker, and I'm just adding a little shadow underneath the seed. Just adding in a little bit of shadow on the seed itself, on the underneath side. Just kind of working on that while my first set of leaves is drying. Just mixing that light green mixture to finish up my leaves. Now just finishing up our detail with my pen. I don't outline everything, I'm just adding in little bits of detail here and there. Just a little bit underneath my seeds. And then our final touch is to add the shadow underneath our strawberries. I'm using my Moonglow. And taking a very watery brush and softening that shadow. Once I lay down my color, I use mostly water after that to kind of spread that shadow. the shadow to spread softly into the water. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, that you learned something new, and that you want to try something new, and that you want to give this strawberry tutorial a try.